Hello coders, this is Jared with Renaissance Coders, and in this video I'm going to do a deep dive into GitHub and the GitHub Desktop application. So far in our source control playlist, I have covered GitHub in a very sort of shallow manner, just going through introducing you to it, creating a repository and things like that, but I also want to go back and just sort of go through GitHub a little more thoroughly, just in case anyone has any questions about, the interface, things like that. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is go back out to the home page, or my home page on GitHub, and out here you can see the read the guide link that we covered in the earlier tutorial. We've got discover interesting projects and things like that, so you could go through GitHub and find other interesting projects. To the right we have your repositories listed out, so we're going to see all of our repositories here are public, private, sources, and forks, all just sort of categorized over there. Up top we can see the pull requests, we can see our issues and gist, which allows us to instantly share code, obviously based on the top here. Instead of spending time covering that, I'm going to go back, and we're actually going to go in and back to the home page. Now we're going to go and look at some deeper functionality within the repository view. Now across the top bar in this view we can see code, issues, pull requests, projects, wiki, and several other things. So if you just click through, you can see all these different pages. This allows us to create a new issue, so if we found a bug in our software we could log an issue here, or if other people are using this repository they can log issues for us. We can look at the pull request. So a pull request basically allows someone else to request a pull request, and then you can pull it into the project. Projects basically allow us to organize our workflow, just giving us a little better visualization of how the work should proceed. A wiki is pretty obvious. We can just very quickly create a wiki for this project. Pulse is actually the analytics portion for this particular repository. We've also got graphs, which shows us things like the contributions and the commits, and you can look through all of these yourself, so we can inside of traffic we can see when things are occurring. You can scroll down a little bit, you can see popular content, referring sites. You can look at when commits were pushed, and just a couple other things in here. The next thing we're going to cover is the settings. Now the settings applies to this particular repository, so these are not global settings. You can easily rename your repository here just by changing the text here and then just clicking on rename. You can enable or disable features here by clicking, so if we didn't want wikis or issue tracking or projects, you can just check those or uncheck those. You have the merge button, so when merging pull requests you can allow any combination of merge commits, squashing or rebasing. Just a little bit deeper functionality here. Then down here we have the danger zone, so we could make this repository private if we wanted to. We could transfer the ownership to a different user, or we could delete a repository. Okay, so back up at the top we have a few other things to go through here. We can click on the collaborators. Well, let me log in. Okay, and if we had additional collaborators, you would be able to see them here, but obviously we don't on this particular repository. You can look at the branches. Again, we don't have any other branches, but you could look at them here if you wanted to. You can also change your default branch. Traditionally, it's always been master. That's how most people handle that, but depending on how you're branching and things like that, you may end up with a different branch that's farther ahead than master, so you could change that here. And then you can also create protected branches, which disables force pushing, and it prevents branches from being deleted. Okay, and we're not going to cover these other three because they're not necessarily applicable to this tutorial. So let's go back out to our tutorial overview and go through a few more things here. Now here we can see the number of commits, the number of branches, the number of releases, and the number of contributors. Below that we can see the branches. If I had other branches I could type it in here and it would come up. If I had a branch name Sagrg, but I don't, you can create a new pull request, create new files, upload files, or find files within this repository, and of course you can clone or download. Now you can just directly clone, or you can actually download a zip file of the repository if you don't need tracking. Okay, so the last thing I want to cover in this GitHub interface is actually the user preferences. So if you click up here, you can actually go to several settings throughout here. You can look at your profile, and your profile is going to show your popular repositories, your total number of repositories, stars, followers, and following. So you can follow people on GitHub, and when you follow someone, you'll get updates on them and what they're working on, things like that. You can also scroll down, and you're going to see like contribution stuff. None of this is really important, but I just want to go through and give you a little more information on GitHub. Now we can click on Edit Profile, and this takes us into the deeper settings. Another way to get here is clicking up top again and going to Settings, and of course we're going to end up in the same place. Now you could upload a picture if you wanted to. I typically don't, but you can. You can set a name. You can change a public name, or public email, excuse me. So if you have multiple email addresses, or you want to show an email address to others who come to your repository or your user page, then they can see that. You can do a bio, add URLs, companies, locations. You can also show contributions, private contributions. If you're going to be working on a project that integrates GitHub, you can join the GitHub Developer Program. You can also specify that you're available for hire. If we click on our accounts, it allows us to change our password, change our username, or delete the account. The emails, you can add a new email address, do a backup email address for security purposes, things like that. Notifications allow us to automatically watch repositories. So once we're given a push access to a repository, we can just sort of automatically watch it. You can also receive notifications for the conversations you are participating in, and notifications for repositories that you're watching. You can customize your email notification here. Billing information, SSH keys, security. You can block users if you wanted to. Again, you can look at your repositories. So there's a lot of stuff in here besides what I've shown so far in other tutorials. So now the next thing I actually want to do is go and do a deeper dive into the GitHub desktop application. So I actually have it open right here. And as you can see, I've got it currently set up with only one of my repositories, which is the git-tutorial repository that was initially created. You can also filter repositories here. And one important button is the syncing button up here. So if you click sync, then it will pull down all of the commits. So it's basically a git pull when you press that sync button. You can also hide the sidebar if you wanted to. You can create a new branch by clicking on this Add a Branch button. We're going to cover branching a little bit later in a little bit later tutorial. If you had other branches, you could click on this button and change branches. You can also create a pull request by clicking on this button up here. Now let's cover this plus button here. Now if we click on this plus button, it will always open up with on this create tab here. So this allows you to create a new repository and also choose the local path. And I'm actually going to go ahead and change my local path here. And now we can also add a repository path that currently exists on our local system. So if I had a repository that was not being tracked in the desktop application, then I could very easily add it here. And of course we can also clone. So I could click on one of these and clone it down to my local computer as well. The next thing I'm going to cover is the actual timeline up here. If you look at the timeline, you can see the commit we're currently on and other commits that have been pushed to the master branch. And if you click on this last one, it shows where you're currently at, which of course we're not updating this repository, so we don't have any changes. Now if we click up top here, we can also go to our preferences, and inside of our preferences we can go to advanced. You can install some command line tools if you wish. You can look at general, which is just sort of saying very simply open repositories in a new window. I don't like to do that because it gets a little annoying after a while, but it's all up to you really. So that's pretty much going to do it for this. I just wanted to go through a little bit more and cover some of this in a little more depth so that everyone knows the interfaces that we're working on. Of course, we're going to continue to learn more and more about both GitHub and the GitHub desktop application as we go deeper into these tutorials, but I felt like it was sort of needed that we cover this in a little more depth in case I cover things a little more quickly in later tutorials. So that's going to do it for this tutorial. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.